All right, I'll now call this House to order. The motion being debated today is, should Elise Noel Peterson go to Roomies with David Vernon Kimball? I would like to welcome the Prime Minister on side government to support the motion. All right. Mr. Speaker, today we have the motion, should Elise go to Roomies with David? And I'm going to propose that this would be a beneficial idea for both Elise and David, and I'm going to explain these in 2 points, with my partner extending this into a third point. So first, I will present to you the model. The model is quite simple. At the end of this debate, Elise will either say yes or no to go to Roomies with David, and then the event will be carried out from there under David's discretion. So we think that there's an important thing to focus on when analyzing this. And so my 2 points are the Roomies event itself and why Elise should go to that and why that is a good thing. And secondly, David, why she should specifically go with David and why that would be beneficial to her whole experience. So my first point is the Roomies event. So Roomies as the event itself is a non-school organized event in that David will have complete control of the evening, probably partner with friends or whatever, and the agenda is set. Now, why is this a good thing? And we think on side government that when you have a more individualized experience, you get better results because it's personalized, it's tailored. Instead of having a school-wide event, which can often be alienating to some people, and it can tend to exclude some types of people, this is literally tailored to the individuals. And so we think that when you have a smaller set of parameters, that you can better dictate what will be enjoyable than not. And so we think that as this is an event that inherently shows or gives the discretion to the small individuals to see what the event is, we think that that is inherently a beneficial thing. Second, we think that going to Roomies with someone is better than without. And so we think that you can go to Roomies and enjoy yourself in a group of people, not necessarily going with someone. But we think that you inherently have more fun once you are asked or ask someone to go with. And why is this true? Well, we think that you see this in companionship. So you are obviously set the whole evening around the structure of you are going with this person. And so you are made for community within that person. So during the entire evening, while you can always enjoy with other friends, you always have this person to go back to and make jokes with. And we think that that prevents people from being left out, whereas when there can be maybe a group of 5, 2 couples and 1 individual, the individual sometimes may find the evening lacking as they might exclude him. But we think that when you go with someone, you are rarely excluded unless the person is being a jerk, which you need to evaluate beforehand. And so this leads to my second point under going to Roomies with someone is better for companionship. And the second reason is money. So when you go to Roomies by yourself, you are expected to pay. But as the girl being asked, if you go with a guy, the guy is supposed to pay for you. And so we think that that obviously is a good thing for your pocketbook, and we think that it helps your personal economy and is a nice gentlemanly thing for the guy to do. So the second point then is, so now that we've shown you why you should go to Roomies, is why you should go to Roomies with David specifically. And we think that this is an important aspect to the motion, and so we think that you should take this part to heart. Now, the first and main point is that you know David. He is not a creep. He's not some weirdo. Imagine being asked by some guy you barely know, what are the risks involved with that? Well, you don't know if you'll have a fun time. You don't know if you'll be compatible. You don't know if this guy's going to kill you. So we think that when you go with David, you already have an understanding of what the event can entail. We think that obviously people aren't defined by the history only, and so you don't know exactly what to expect, but you have a rough idea of what the event can be, the potential, and we think that you can discount some of them, such as wanting to kill you, because we know that's not who David is. So when you go to Roomies with David, you'll have a good grasp of who he is, and obviously he's a good guy and you guys have fun. Secondly, you already do hang out and have fun together, such as events like going out in the park and almost getting arrested by cops rather. And so we think that this is an extension of that. And so once you go to Roomies with David specifically, you can continue to have those types of adventures, but it's only an extension and a sort of an evolution, a superlative kind of adventure that you would be having normally. So we think that that is beneficial in that you are able to expand on something you already like and already have fun with. So what have I told you today? So I've told you that it would be beneficial for Elise to go to Roomies with David for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 being Roomies is a fun event. It's personally tailored to you, and going to Roomies with someone is better than without. And second, we think that it's good that you would go with David because you know David, you know you have fun with David, and you know he's not a creep, and that your adventures that you already have together, this would just merely be an extension of that, nothing particularly worse. So for those reasons, we can only support a ballot in proposition. All right, thank the Prime Minister. And now I would like to welcome to the stage the Deputy, or the Leader of Opposition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, side government just came up here and told you a variety of things why Elise should go to Roomies with David, but we here on the opposition think that this would be a mistake and it would be detrimental, and we will give you 2 reasons why that is true, but first I'm going to start with 2 points of refutation. So they tried to tell you, I think Donald came up here and tried to tell you that an organized event is overall worse than a small personally tailored event. But we think that that's inherently not true because you have checks and balances on bigger events to make sure they're fun. You have multiple input, whereas a smaller event could easily collapse. And so we think that that's inherently a risk. We think that's a riskier thing, and you could end up having it flop quite easily. Second point of refutation. They brought up to you the fact that this would be an extension of adventures they already have of having fun. We think that if you already have this idea of an adventures, why do you need Roomies to do that? We see that it causes more harm than good, and this will be brought to you in our 2 points of positive matter. That not going is inherently better, and why specifically not going with David. So not going is better. When we look at the culture of NU, we see that there is a rumor culture. We see that guy and girl interactions are often stereotyped in cliche, weird, forward manners. And so when you do something like Roomies, even though there is a strong emphasis from proponents of Roomies not to associate stereotypes and stigmas onto that, we think that there's a culture that is very real and exists beyond what the NU government would want you to think. And so when you go, even if there's no intention of something weird, there are oftentimes going to be odd cliches attached with this and weird rumors and people perceiving you as odd. And even if you have the best intentions, this can come up. And so we think that that's a bad reason. Second is commitment. We know that we are gearing up for a hard week of school and a hard 2 weeks of school. And so we think that committing to a specific time to go out on a specific set of event like this can be detrimental to your studies, to your well-being, because you may be tired. And so these 2 reasons, you should not have to commit to something. If you are able to go on an adventure, we think that that's fantastic. We would say that that is good. You have afforded the time. You don't have a paper due the next day, or you are fine on sleep and don't need to get an extreme amount of rest. But you can't guarantee that in the future. And so when you commit to a set time, you are left with 2 options in this, or three options. One option, which is a good option, is that you can go and everything's fine. But we think that these 2 options are more likely. One option being that you don't have the time and you cancel. And we think that canceling is inherently worse than just flat out rejecting, because you've gotten hopes up, you've set an expectation, and rejecting is worse than first for a flat out rejection from the beginning. And second, we think that it is bad because if you do end up going when you have a paper due or a lack of sleep, those things suffer worse. And so the fallout of a bad grade on a paper or the fallout of doing poorly in class or at work because of a lack of sleep is much worse than missing out on this event because you've committed in a poor manner. Second point of opposition, why not David? Well, I think the first and most obvious reason is David has a very weird brother. Now, when going to Roomies, that is always something that people consider. Do they have weird siblings? And so when we look at David, we see that Donald Kimball is his brother, and we don't want to be associated with anything to do with that. And so if you were to go to Roomies with David, while this may be an extension of adventures you already have, this is something formal, and so it is formally saying, yes, I choose to be associated with someone who is inherently associated with Donald Kimball, and we think that that's an inherently bad idea. Second, he has a classic David V hashtag. What kind of people have hashtags on Twitter? We think people that have hashtags on Twitter are dislike politicians, like Stand with Rand Paul. We think that he is very much disliked around the country. While he does have a fan base, he also has lots of vehement haters. We think people like Miley Cyrus have hashtags on Twitter, and she is obviously very much disliked by countless people across the nation. And so when we see classic David V, we see he is setting himself up to be hated by millions of people. And so the question is that as iron sharpens iron, so another brother can sharpen a brother in their faith. Do you want to be associated and sharpened by someone who is hated by millions across the country? So what have I told you? We've said that not going is better because of the NU rumor culture and weird stigmas, because committing can often be more detrimental than flat-out rejection to begin with. And second, why David is not good is because he has a weird brother that you don't want to be associated with, and you also don't want to associate yourself with a widely hated person. And so for these reasons, we would strongly recommend you side with opposition. Okie dokie, I invite the Deputy Prime Minister to come up and speak the extension of the argument why David should go to Roomies with Elise. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, we've seen Donald from side opposition come up here and try to refute why not going to Roomies was going to be a bad situation for Elise and why David is a bad pick. But I'm going to start out with 2 points of refutation, and then I'm going to move on why Elise should go with David. Not why Elise should go with David, but why Elise should go with David, and why that would be an overall beneficial situation. So, my first point of refutation is they brought up the point that Roomies could flop. He said that it was a, quote, risk. But we would argue that sometimes the best decisions and best experiences in life are inherently risks. And we think that if you discount doing something because it is a risk, because it is risky, you have excluded yourself from some of the best moments of life. And so we think that this is not enough to dissuade going to Roomies with David. Second, commitment helps you structure your time better. So they brought to you this idea that commitment is a horrible thing and that committing can often cause bad results. But we see that college students with jobs tend to prioritize their time better. Even though this is a chunk of time that is not being used for school, there is an average higher grade. Why is this? It's because when you have made these commitments, when you set aside time for specific things, you inherently structure your time better. So this is an example of a situation shaping you for the better. And so when you make this kind of commitment, you can learn from it, you can budget your time accordingly, and you will have an overall beneficial experience all around. So I'm going to move into my positive matter now, and I've got 2 points. My first point being Wiley catch-up, and my second point being Elise is a Star Wars fan. So my first point of Wiley catch-up. So when you consider going to Roomies or whether not going to Roomies, what do you think Wiley catch-up would do? Elise is Wiley catch-up. So when you consider this attribute, you have to be true to yourself. Well, Wiley catch-up, the first word in that is Wiley. What is the wilier option? Well, we think that wilier option is obviously going to Roomies, because I cannot say that not going to an event is rather wily. That seems passive, it seems apathetic, but does not seem wily. Wily would be taking a risk, taking a gamble, putting yourself in a situation where you are able to do shenanigans. That is the wily thing to do. And so we think that if Elise is to be true to herself, she would go in order to enact her wily nature. Second word in that is ketchup. Now the purpose of ketchup as a condiment is to enhance. And so we think that in the same way, Elise should enhance Roomies by putting her presence there. We think that when you have an event like this, that more people generally means it will be more successful and it will be enhanced. And so if Elise, again, is to be true to herself, she will follow the enhancement nature of ketchup and will enhance the evening overall. Second, she's a Star Wars fan. Now this, I think, is where it comes down, where the most important argumentation must be made. So Roomies starts with an R, and so does R2-D2. Now we all know that Elise is a Star Wars fan. So if she is to flat out reject going to Roomies with David, that you obviously can see that she hates R2-D2, which can any true Star Wars fan truly hate R2-D2. So what we've seen here is that Elise has to go to Roomies to be associated with liking R2-D2. Otherwise, you flat out reject R2-D2 and hate Star Wars. Second, David's first 2 letters of his name start D-A, and those are like the last 2 in Yoda, D-A. So again, we see that going to Roomies with David is inherently something that is part of her nature, and something that if she is to be true to herself, she will follow. So we think that this is inherent in Elise's identity. Through wily catch-up, her being wily and going to an event, being catch-up and enhancing the evening, and second, to her nature as a Star Wars fan, as Roomies starts with R and R2-D2 does as well, and therefore if she likes R2-D2, she must go to Roomies, and any true Star Wars fan must like R2-D2. And second, David's first two letters starts with DA, just like Yoda, and so in a similar sense, she absolutely must go to Roomies with David if she is to claim to have any respect for the Star Wars franchise and have any respect for Master Yoda. And so for these reasons, we would suggest a proposition vote. All right. And so now I would invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition to come up here and refute the points made and bring in some positive material. I would like to concede there is no argumentation that can beat that. We are soundly defeated. Thank you. All right. The judges have decided, and the winner is side government, that Elise should go to Roomies with David. Thank you so much for your participation in the debate.